Derrick Broze is going to be our next speaker. He is one of the most amazingly hardcore and ethical people I've ever met in my life. This man has done some amazing activism. He rode his bike across the country, rode his bicycle, not a motorbike, he pedaled on a bicycle across the country, documenting activist communities along the way and his experience as, you know, what would you call it, a road journalist, a bicycle journalist?
A rogue journalist.
A rogue journalist. He has cojones like no one I've ever met. But seriously, he is a phenomenal activist on so many levels. He is brave and he is honorable. And something that Derrick does that I think is missing in the liberty movement is he is encouraging people to reconnect with their spirituality and to reconnect with themselves and with the source, with Mother, Father, Universe, whatever you want to call him, her, it, us. We are all one, and Derrick is one of the first people that I've run into in the liberty movement that really seems to vibe on that frequency and really seems to understand it and take it to heart. And I believe that he is setting the bar for activists all across the globe, because it's not just about being against something or being anti-something. It's about growing and evolving as a human being so that we can all do it together as a species. And I have thoroughly enjoyed learning from Derrick, and these are the type of activists that I like to surround myself with, ones that are so much further evolved than me that I'm trying to catch up and I'm trying to learn more. So he's on a path, on a journey, and I feel like I'm walking that path with him, and sometimes he is the guide and he's showing the way to go. And I really, really think what he has done, becoming an independent journalist and finding a way to feed and sustain himself through his journalism. He does not just write for the Liberty Beat. He writes for many publications, and Liberty Beat is just one of the many, and that's kind of why we want to raise a lot of money so we can snag him up before someone else does. We really want him here full time. So to honor Derrick and Brian, please contribute, donate whatever you can. Look at the silent auction items. If you want something there, you know, there's Bitcoin miners, there's t-shirts, there's all sorts of great stuff. Oh, well there's... Really, today, for me, I don't know if I'm speaking for John or not, but for me, this event, this fundraiser, this party, this live stream is in honor of Derrick and honor of Brian, because they are the heart and soul of the Liberty Beat, and without them, it would still be John by himself in our home studios struggling to do it while the kids are banging on the door. And so it has been such a blessing having Derrick and Brian around, and it is an honor for me to introduce him as our next speaker for the Be the Media mini conference. Derrick Broze.
I don't know if I can. Yes, that is at @DBrozLiveFree on Twitter, as John has so helpfully reminded everybody. I don't know if I can live up to all that hype. That was a lot of hype, wasn't it?
That was a lot of hype. Live up to it.
All right. Well, I don't know. I didn't really plan anything to say other than, you know, just want to talk to you guys a little bit about, I guess, somewhat my journey and how I got into doing all the things that Kat was just talking about, and of course, give thanks and appreciation to John and to Kat, who did that hard, difficult work they were just talking about, laid the groundwork for the Liberty Beat, amongst many other projects, and it's really from them and people like Matt Medina that I take my inspiration for. You know, when I meet people who are like, how do you do so many things, you know, this, like, we all have personal lives, and being involved in activism and trying to, you know, make a living. It is very difficult, but I've never felt more inspired or encouraged by anything in my life than the message of freedom and communicate with people and trying to get people to think about why it's important for us to work to be free. And in the midst of that journey, going from, you know, discovering the drug war, the myths behind the drug war, the failures of the drug war, being caught up in the drug war, and starting to educate myself on that, the more information I came across, not even getting to anything conspiratorial, false flags, or really the failures and lies of the government, I started to realize the barrier that is the media. You know, you read a book and you learn the history of the drug war and how it's based on racism and money. Basically, that's why most drugs are illegal, if you look at it historically. And even that simple conversation, you try to communicate with your friends, your family. We all know the trouble, the difficulty in getting your friends, your immediate friends and family to listen to your latest interest about waking people up, and they're generally not interested. But one of the biggest blocks to that is the media. The media is why, because then they can immediately turn from listening to you rant about crazy things going on in the world and look at their TV, and their TV tells them that everything's okay. The radio tells them that everything's okay. And before the internet, most of the information that we all talk about was pretty much left to public access TV, like Alex Jones and other people around the country, newsletters and DVDs being circulated. But we couldn't just as easy go to the internet and search for New World Order, freedom, liberty, and find millions of sources of information to awaken your mind. So that wasn't there always, and now we have the internet that's evolving that. But we have to understand the importance in the media in controlling the conversation. And I think most people here do understand that without independent voices, even in the mainstream media, because I don't really support or believe in the mainstream itself as an institution, as a collective, but there are still many journalists, and most of these are older folks who remember, like, hey, wait, this is not what we're doing. We're now the new class, and as getting to work with Ben Swan as well has been a huge inspiration and another source of understanding for how media works from the other side, and getting him to hear how he went to journalism school and then learned that his job was going to be not to be a journalist, but to be a repeater, to repeat what they were told from their various corporate sponsors or from whatever message that the news media wanted to portray. So the job of the media has now become, at least in the mainstream for the most part, has become to be repeaters. They're not going deeper, they don't provide context, and they call this objectivism. They say that this is objective, independent media. This is, this is the only way to write. But many of us, and I try to maintain some level of objectivism in my writing. I usually say my little why you should support this for the last paragraph or two, and I just lay out all the facts. But the thing is, the important thing is context, which is not what the mainstream media does. Associated Press, Reuters, these news feeds, they serve a purpose, but they're like, here's all the facts about something that just happened, and you decide what to do with it, right? And then we take that and we show that single fact and add it to the context. Well, did you also know that the government's been working on this program and that these factors contribute to that, and really paint a picture and not tell people what to think. That's never what I believe that I'm trying to tell anybody what to think with my articles or with anything that I do as far as videos or articles. It's just painting a more clear picture than the mainstream would have you believe. To them it's just real simple, it's black and white. And if you bring in your opinion or you bring in these other ideas, then you're not an objective journalist. You're not to be respected in the mainstream world. And I think that's a big problem. That's another thing that I've picked up from Ben as well, that there's not just two sides to a story. So being objective is not just showing both sides, because there's no such thing as just two sides. There's a number of different sides. There's all kinds of different versions, and we know this from watch a car crash and ask the 10 people who witnessed it what they saw, and everybody's going to see different things. The same thing goes for what's happening in the government. So I realized that there was a big block with the media, and started the Houston Freethinkers, and in the beginning it was just mimicking We Are Change San Antonio, putting out DVDs and flyers and going out and passing out information, trying to meet new people. And once we had a good amount of people, like, okay, now we're here, we're having meetings, there's 20 or so of us here, and we know friends who care about this, and there's other people online. What do we do now? Okay, let's start a website. And on that website we just, none of us were getting paid or anything. It's just like, hey, let's show people what's really going on, and writing articles, and then every now and then one of those articles getting picked up by like InfoWars or something, and like, oh wow, people are like, hey, I saw your article on this website and this and that. And that's a good feeling, for somebody to say, oh, I'd never heard about this topic, or I didn't know about this particular piece of information until I read your article, or until I watched this video you did. And that's like fuel to me, That's every time I think like, man, I'm done, I can't do this anymore, screw everybody else, I'm just going to find my cabin in the woods and I'll figure it out for myself. And then somebody else is like, I read this, I saw this, or you posted this, and it's just like, all right, I'll keep going, like, I'll keep pushing, because I want to liberate myself as much as I want to help collectively lead all of us to our own individual liberation. And so I started to learn the power behind that. Okay, I'm writing an article which is just my thoughts put into a nice, concise manner, and it's getting views. You get like the first time you hit a video, or and some other people in this room can probably attest to this, but the first time you get a video or an article or something that hits like 1,000 views or even 100, you're just like, oh wow, 100 people watch this. And then you get something that for whatever reason goes viral, and you get 100,000 plus views, and then you realize the impact of that, the power of that. You see other websites reblogging your work and reposting it and getting shared, and then people taking your work and editing it and chopping it into their own videos about police brutality or whatever. And I mean, it's a very empowering feeling. And my main 2 points, while I'm just running on a tangent here, is if you take anything out of this, is just to literally to become the media. Like, it doesn't there are people within the media, especially on a local level that I've run into, who believe that their press passes or their $100,000 camera sets them apart from you in any way. And there's also, I've been, you know, I don't really like to put labels on myself, but I guess that you could consider me a journalist in the sense that the definition of a journalism is somebody that has a journal and goes out and witnesses events, journals about them, and then reports them to other people. But I've often been called or told by people within the Houston community or other journalists that I'm not a journalist, that I'm an activist, that I can't be an activist and a journalist at the same time, which completely ignores schools of journalism like immersion journalism and citizen journalism. So I just want to like smash that to pieces. If anybody thinks that there's anything different that I or anybody else here speaking today or tonight or anybody on TV, men and women in suits behind, in front of green screens being watched by expensive cameras, there's no difference between you or I. In fact, we have more of an ability to report truth than they do because they're bound by their jobs and the corporations that back them. You know, if one of these talking heads, for example, like Bill O'Reilly or anybody, just pick one of them, found a story and then they found some more information on it, but it didn't fit the narrative that their show, that their platform was trying to push, they wouldn't be allowed to push that. They wouldn't be allowed to report on those the facts, you know. But for me, when I tell people that, yeah, I'm not objective, I have a commitment to basically to destroying the idea that government is necessary. So yeah, I look for stories that help point that out. But the thing is, I'm not making them up. The government's doing all these things, so it's pretty easy to make that your point. But I sort of use the media in my toolbox of agorist tools. The media is like, well, okay, if we're going to replace the institutions of government with community gardens, we're going to replace them with self-governance or even just alternative institutions that can rule our lives through, you know, community legislatures and stuff like that, well then we definitely have to replace the media and realizing that, I mean, we can talk to people all day about what's happening in the world, but if they can still turn on that TV and the TV tells them that everything is fine or everything's scary and be afraid of everything, you see the impact that they have on them. So we have to get past that. And I mean, there's really straightforward ways, like, okay, let's go hijack a TV station and just broadcast documentaries all day, you know, and do that. I don't know how well that'd go over, but beyond that, we have to do things like create new institutions, just like tourism talks about, create and support entrepreneurial efforts, whether people are trying to become independent journalists or activists or create a local business that serves good and healthy food. I mean, there's these different ventures that we need to support, which I think for me is why I'm happy to work with John Catt on this, because yeah, I write for 3 or 4 other websites and contribute to a few others and get paid better other places. I mean, better if higher wages is better, then I guess that's what you would say. But with the Liberty Beat, it's authentic, and I respect the people that I'm working with, and I believe in it. And also, to me, one of the things that this job offers to me that I don't get other places is the fact that it's broadcast on FM stations, and now with this new deal with GCN, which I think is a really awesome thing. I mean, to me, it's just a little taste of power, right? And using it in a good way. I wake up throughout my day, I'm thinking of 3 to 6 stories that I'm going to write for the Liberty Beat. I write the majority of them right now. I'm the only writer, and John and Kat help out as well. So that means they're going to play these 6 stories on a 5-minute news update at the top of the hour across Austin and now other cities and online, and they play that 6, 7, 8 times a day, and I get to choose the stories that people hear. You know, I mean, that's a powerful thing. Like, so I'm specifically looking for things that the mainstream media is not talking about. I really focus on indigenous resistance a lot as well. In America and really all around the world, anytime I can, you know, I keep up with news feeds on that. When I see a story that, like, hey, people sitting in Houston or Austin are not going to typically hear about some native village struggling against Chevron down in Ecuador. You know, well, I'm going to do my part to shine a light on that. You know, and I love that. I love being able to do that. I really feel blessed to do that. To sit there and be like, okay, how can I? Or like everybody's talking about Ebola or ISIS or whatever. Well, then I get my little 1 minute of the story to find a creative way, because it is a challenge compared to writing an 800+ word article where you can really flesh out this. I've got a paragraph or 2 at most to write and to put all those ideas so that when you hear that 30-second soundbite, you've got everything. You're at least enough to get you to go look further, you know. So that's an interesting challenge for me too, is like, okay, let's shrink down this bit of important information. I need this to be on the radio. How can I condense this with just a couple of sentences and get people to understand it? And I appreciate that. I love knowing that I have the ability to do that. And along the journey, as I said, there's been people who don't believe the work that I do is journalism, or that being an activist like somehow prevents you from also being able to report on facts that are happening. Screw all that. We all have the capability of being journalists. I'm not interested in being a part of any type of journalism elite. You know, some people, what I was saying earlier about the local news is sometimes you meet these local people and they see, like for instance, when I was in Ferguson, and we would stay up, me and a couple of independent journalists from a couple of different websites, we would stay up late every night because the Ferguson PD were not holding their press conferences till 2 or 3 in the morning, which we think was on purpose. There's nothing else going on there, the protests and stuff happening, but they wouldn't announce it till real late at night. So we'd stay there all night, and you'd see them come set up the podium and getting ready, and you see CNN and Fox and all the mainstream people there, and then the guy comes up to the podium, the police chief, he's like, says, oh, tonight we had this many arrests, this and that, I'll now take questions. None of them say anything. That's it. That's the end of the press conference. You know, instead we're over here with our, you know, with my camera, our less than $100,000 equipment, and seeing the looks. They're like, okay, who are these? Like, you know, we don't look like we're not in suits or anything like the rest of these guys are, and so they're kind of looking at us like, all right, who are these people? But we're the only ones asking questions. You know, I got me on record asking this guy, the chief of police, to clarify certain things that the media were reporting over and over, that they could have just as easily gone up and asked the police chief to clarify like I did, but instead they'd rather be obscure in the media and let people think all kinds of things. You know, it's just like a one question. Can you verify that these statements happen, blah, blah, blah. I have no information on that, we don't have no, okay, cool, there we go. That's a video, that's me reporting something that they refuse to ask or won't ask or whatever reason. That's news, you know, that's all they're doing. They just have a larger audience than we do. So, well, at this point, their audience is definitely shifting. This is one important thing to remember, is that the majority of people who watch, I know specifically with Fox News, and I'm going to wager that it's probably all across the board, the people who are still stuck on cable news, that audience, the age is average like 70, early 70s. So this is a generation that has grown up, like they woke up with like all of a sudden there's TV, there's news everywhere, we have free access. You know, go back before when it was only newspapers and news, and you never heard about what's happening. But then all of a sudden TV's there. People thought it was this great invention and we had access to information like never before. That was quickly controlled, if not controlled from the beginning. And now people realize that, like, okay, if I want this opinion, I'll look at Fox. If I want this opinion, I'll look at MSNBC. If I want a mix of the two, I'll watch CNN. You know, but now there's all these other opinions breaking that wall, and these ideas breaking through. And I don't know if we'll ever replace them in the sense that the Liberty Beat's going to be in some $1 million building and we'll be broadcasting all these you know, expensive equipment. But I don't know if that's necessary. You know, we don't need to become that model. The idea is to create a new model, and that model is going to look different in a number of ways will we exercise. In Houston, we'll try some methods that might not work so well in San Antonio or in Dallas or in Austin. And in Austin, the same thing. New Hampshire, they try out their experiments with media. There's a lot of different ways that we can go about this. So I really just encourage everybody who's interested in this to just get going. I mean, people ask, when you meet somebody like me meeting John and Heather and Matt and everybody years ago, and just seeing how, in my mind, how far along they had been, and like, wow, how can I ever get to that point? And you're like, damn, it's just like, it's discouraging in some ways. You're like looking at somebody that you feel inspired by, and you want to do that, but you see all these blocks and limitations and things that are going to prevent you from doing that. But what I believe is you just start doing it, you know, you just do it. Because the truth of the matter is that even if nobody had ever seen any of my videos or done anything I've been doing, I would like to believe that I would still be doing it, because the ideas are important enough to do whether anybody's watching or not, you know. And then if people do resonate with it and they like your message or they like the way that you're putting out there, then yeah, just encourage them, you know, because as long as we keep doing this and stop putting each other on a pedestal. I notice that some activists and some people, I think, fall into an ego trap of just buying into the celebrity activist status or whatever, and I am quick to dismiss that, because it's important for us to teach each other, like, hey, you're just like me, you can do this. In a couple of years, you're going to be doing things way better than I've even thought of, because we need you, you know, and that's the key, is that each of us together are going to make this change. It's not going to be one of us, and that's all I got. We got the networking party at Goris Market. Is it time for the market, or are we going?
Yeah, did you take questions?
I will take questions if there's questions. Is there questions? You go first. You go first.
Can you talk about how your spiritual journey led you to activism?
Yeah, sure. I thought that part would be boring, so I didn't bring that part up. I've told that story a million times. The question was for the live stream, how did my spiritual journey play into my activism or journalism? Well, honestly, I think that my spiritual journey preceded the beginning of it, at least if there can be a beginning, because we're on a journey from the second we come into this world. But the beginning of that journey preceded my activism. I was arrested in 2005, and I spent some time locked up. Spent 18 months behind bars for selling drugs, and that's how I said I became a direct part of the drug war and learned a lot through that. And I got out in October 2008, right as Obama was getting elected, so it was a really interesting time to get out. While I was locked up, I'm watching TV and seeing like John McCain and Obama, and just like seeing this hysteria over this Obama guy, you know, and really, I've always been anti-authoritarian and anti-government, whatever, but not for any sort of reason that if you ask me why, I just think that, because I just don't like people telling me what to do. You know, I didn't really understand why I felt that way, but getting out at that time, and the whole time I was locked up, I basically realized that I somehow lost my way, you know, that my getting into drugs was really just a symptom of my unhappiness, and this is something that my friend Adam Kokesh and others have come around to finally understanding, something that I feel like I've been trying to push out for years now, is that if you're not happy inside, then it doesn't really matter, you know, what you're doing on the external world, like you're not really free at that point. And I realized that while I was in there. I mean, I'm surrounded by all sorts of ego and BS from people who, like, you know, want to fight or be in gangs or just like act all macho or whatever. And I'm sitting there trying to meditate at night, hearing people whisper about it and saying stuff. And that was a real challenge. But I think it was also something that helped me. And I just said, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to be here and just go within. And I learned so much about myself. And I spent time just like writing and really trying to examine why I was there, what led me to using drugs, and all these other things that I was doing that, despite not believing that people should be jailed for drugs, I do think that there were things that were going on with me internally, that the drugs were just a symptom of that. You know, that's the whole point, is that the drugs, I don't think they need to be illegal. I think what I got arrested for, crystal meth, I think people should have the freedom to choose if they want to go down that road or not. But I do recognize there were things I need to deal with. And not everybody goes into jail or prison in those institutions and decides to go within. It's a choice. You know, some people, I definitely met, like in the beginning, I went in for a year, and I thought I got everything I needed. I was back within 5 months because I started just going back to hang out with the same people, doing the same things. It was still the same behavior, so it took me a while to really, it was a 4-year thing of probation, parole, learning all that. And, you know, I learned more crime when I was in there than when I was out. I met people who were good at identity theft and all kinds of things. So, I mean, if I wanted to go further down that path, I totally had, you know, the option to. And for a while, I was still kind of going back and forth. Eventually, though, I realized, like, nah, this is not working. I need to figure my shit out because I don't really know what I'm doing. I just know that I haven't been happy. And so if I tried a life full of stuffing as many drugs up my orifices as I can, and that didn't lead me to enlightenment, why not try something different? And when I was locked up, I started getting sent books from my grandmother and from friends who were sending me, like, the Dhammapada, which is like the Buddhist Bible, and like just different stuff on Zen meditation. And that was really the beginning of that journey. Fast forward to about a year and a half after I got out of being locked up, and I started the Free Thinkers because, as I said, I read a book about the drug war, started getting really concerned and talking to my immediate friends and seeing who didn't give a crap about making the world a better place and who was actually interested in trying to do something, not just bitch about it or write music about it or whatever. And met some cool people, yeah, and along the way, that like helped me get into that initial waking up, but I really feel like it even went to another level. Summer 2012, I don't know what particularly, there's a couple of different things that led to it, but around that time is when I founded the Conscious Resistance Network, and this idea of that freedom is not just the freedom that we seek in the external world, freedom from government, but it's also freedom from our own internal tyranny, from our own judgment and our negative thinking and the doubts, insecurities, fears, and everything that we all deal with individually in different ways, that those are really the chains that we should seek to break. And so to me, it's like the idea of the conscious resistance is, I recognize that I'm not free in the physical world, and I'm creating solutions and working on freeing myself in that world, but I've also decided that I want to take that even further and be in control of like my own mind, my own heart, my own spirit, however you want to put it. And yeah, so definitely spirituality has definitely shaped the way I look. I mean, I call it like compassionate activism or bodhisattva activism. A bodhisattva is somebody in Buddhism who's basically decided to put off their own enlightenment until all other sentient beings have been saved as well. So that's kind of, I'd like to take that into account, like thinking like, okay, well, like I said earlier, we can all just go out into the woods and abandon each other and start our own little, our individual lives, but ultimately, this tyranny, the problems that we face are going to spread. Whatever you call it, statism, government, whatever it is. Like, if you don't stop it here, and it's going to spread other places. And that's essentially the problem. All the people who think that they are above us and are these ruling class elite, they're sick. You know, I mean, they're damaged. We're all, like, as I believe that as a species, we have pain and things that we need to deal with, and it shows itself in different ways in different people. You know, but that's essentially, these people have like this desire to control other people and dominate them. But I believe if they worked on whatever it is that they're dealing with, and maybe it's just been generations of being told that you're better than everybody or something like that. I don't know. But that to me is the answer, is like just working on our, you know, when we talk about localization, the most local you can go is right here in your own heart. You know, work on that first, and at the same time. And to me, that's what voluntarism and anarchy is about, really, is like, you just, okay, I see these problems in the world, but I can't control everybody else. And when I find myself personally, whether it's to do with activism or things going on in the world, or even just interacting with other individuals, if I find myself like focusing on another person and like criticizing them, you know, you ever catch yourself where you're just like, so you got all this energy, and you're like, why am I just sitting here like staring at this person with all this anger, like, well, I'm judging them, I'm doing these things, and just pull yourself back and think about this phrase, which I hate it because I had it beat into my head at one of these institutions, but it does have some relevance. If you spot it, you got it. Usually the problems that you have with yourself, you see in other people. So if you're sitting there judging somebody and thinking all these things about them, you might want to look at that and think about, maybe I'm the one doing those things. And if I don't like that enough with somebody else, how are other people seeing me? So yeah, it's just a little tip out there. But any other questions? Heather, do you have one?
Oh, I was going to ask what the very first video or article was that you created that you were wanting to get out to people. The first message that you were trying to get out.
The first message I was trying to get out, as far as, you know, I started the Houston Freethinkers blog first and did that for about 6 months. It was just like, and I've left those writings up for history. People want to go see like what I was thinking like in my very early days, like, which was really, like, when I see it, it's just like this like innocent raw of just like, I need to like find people, and just looking at everything going on in the world, and like, this is happening in the police. Like, you can just totally see the rhetoric of like, I was listening to Alex Jones at the time and different things, but I think that's important. We all go through those stages, and so I blogged for a while, but it was probably just something in Houston. I'm trying to think of the first thing that really the first thing that I wanted to get out, that I was successful at, that was in my control, because there was videos that went viral without me choosing, like me getting arrested by HPD, and that, you know, that went all over. I was interviewed by all the news stations and stuff, but it wasn't like, it sucked for us because in one way, like, all of a sudden the Houston Freethinkers and me are like in all the media, every station in the city, but it's for like, as they framed it, a local group of conspiracy theorists battle with the cops, instead of like all the community work we're doing, and like, you know, the charity money we're raising, all this stuff. So that was a little disappointing. But the first thing that I like pushed was, or we collectively pushed as a group, and which I think is so far our highest achievement, is kicking the TSA off the Houston buses.
Yeah.
Like writing our own articles about that, helping organize with lawyers, and telling people to go to the Houston Metro board meetings, and being able to take over those board meetings and force them to set up another meeting, and force them to just, within 2 weeks, like, it went from this, like, somebody sent, one of our members was sending me a picture, dude, I just got off this bus, look at this, TSA searching people, the press conference, within 2 weeks, they were gone, we kicked them out of the city. Like, that was, being able to like take that video and like just promote, like put out, like, hey, if you guys care, like, this is a chance right here in our city to stop this stuff. And as far as I know, we've been the only city that's been able to successfully, because it was like the launch of the Bus Safe program, where basically by riding the Houston Metro, you would be subject to anybody riding it, which I ride the bus. You know, a lot of people it didn't affect them, but I ride the bus regularly. So at any point, they could come up with like dogs and like ask for your ID, search your bag, do whatever, and we were able to successfully end that program and kick it out of Houston. So writing about that was a good feeling. Anything else? Well, I think we got something. What you got, Trip?
Yeah, I guess you touched on it a little bit, but like, I guess I'd like to hear more ways in which you kind of deal with those voices that kind of put you down, internal and external.
So the inner trolls and the outer trolls. Your internal troll is probably the worst one, the one that tells you, don't write that, don't post that, don't say that. You know what, I just look silly on this video, why am I even doing this? Nobody's paying attention. I'm going back to work at McDonald's. Things like that, you know, the discouraging. That's honestly where my struggles have always been the most, is the internal tyrant, the internal troll, like just getting past the doubt. I mean, that's really all it is. It's your own doubt and fear, or other people who, again, I don't blame people if they have their own hang-ups. You know, if they're looking at somebody. Usually, what I find is like people when you start getting active and you want to do something positive, for some reason all of a sudden people want to tell you how you can't do it, and like you won't succeed. You know, we grow up like people telling us like, hey, reach for the stars, you can achieve anything. Then after a certain point they're like, why are you doing that? Why are you bothering? You're trying something, why don't you just, you know, go just live your life, stop stressing yourself out, or stop bothering the cops, all these different things that are meant to deter you, but it's ultimately, I believe, because they don't believe in themselves and they don't think they can do it. But every time you choose to do it and you say like, I hear you, man, I appreciate it, but I really believe in this and I want to be passionate about this, I'm telling you, like, I mean, most of the people and like probably the way that we met, man, is just like from me doing stuff and people reaching out, hey, I see what you're doing, like I want to do something similar, help me, you know, and those things, that's what really matters. So I guess to answer that, just the outer trolls, man, they don't even really matter. If there's not enough time in this world that we have left to spend using it on hate and, you know, negativity. And I would say that even directed towards these elite, the government or whatever, like why spend hate? Like be for something instead of against something, basically, you know what I mean? Like when they're against you or they're telling you not to do this, we'll just push even harder for the things that you believe in, you know, because the people that are working to destroy freedom and working to eliminate the communal bonds that we all share, they're working every day, like, you know, they're constantly working, so why should we stop and pause and decide whether or not this is worthy enough? I mean, it is worthy enough. This cause of liberty, of freedom, of fighting for a better world is worth all the time we have.
Can I add one more thing to that question?
Sure.
Also situations, because you had to deal with, you know, being on parole and going in and out of jail. I'm on probation right now, and that's really like a situational deterrent. So it's not even like a voice, but it's just like, you know, things are keeping me from being as active as I want to be. I'm sure you had to deal with that too.
So he's asking about probation and dealing with, and I think this is interesting because I've actually run into a number of people who've told me, I love what you're doing and I would be out there with you, but I'm on probation. And usually it's for something like smoking weed or something silly like that. It shouldn't even be a big deal. But, I mean, realistically, man, when the state has you, and even with probation where you got 1 foot in, 1 foot out, like, I don't really want to say you got to go by what they say, but I mean, you do put yourself at risk. Like, I don't think being at a protest itself is a violation of probation or anything like that. But obviously, if you're in a situation where you risk being arrested, for example, like, it's just about knowing your limits. You know what I mean? Like me, I have nothing to hold back from me. I don't have to worry about like any kids or anything. You know, so if I spend 2 days in jail or something, like, it's just me dealing with that. You know, I understand my risks. I can assess that. Like, oh wait, I got work or whatever it is. You got to be like, okay, I can go this far. I can go this far. Okay, now here come the cops. I'm on probation. I gotta be smart about this. Let me like step back and let some of the other people have less of a risk. You know what I mean? But we can all still play our role. You can be more subversive online or in other ways that don't put your probation at direct risk. Because I have a feeling that that's probably an issue for quite a bit of people because there's so many people stuck in the political in the legal system, the justice system.
Thanks, man.
All right, one more, and then I think I'm done.
You spoke of the importance of spirituality in your, role as an activist. So what I want to ask is maybe for some advice to reach people that are maybe stuck in some of the ideologies of fear-based, like institutionalized religions, and how to get them to come to a place where they can embrace a more heart-centered spirituality.
Okay, so the question was how to communicate and deal with people who may be concerned with things going on in the world, but they're coming from a religion or a place of religious background that is more fear-driven. And I think that regardless of your beliefs, everybody in this room can probably agree that religion at different points has been used to control people, to push fear. The church, and a lot of times, has been the religious arm of the state. Religion is obviously a touchy subject, but I think what's important, I'm going to give a short but long answer, is historically looking back before the state and these other people monopolized religion the same way they've monopolized currency, as they were saying earlier, justice, monopolizing justice, they monopolized belief and the connection to God. Before that, we used to have shamans or spiritual leaders of all types, and tribes and communities going back thousands of generations where people could have their own connection to God, their own connection to the universe. We could make up our own minds about what God was and what a spiritual experience was and how that empowered us. Eventually we came to a point where it was only the priests and the popes. They were the only ones with the books that were the writings of God, and they were the only ones that had this direct relationship to God. And that has been changed So I believe that in the same way that the state and the people behind the state have changed our view of self-ownership and self-governance and made it to where we have generations of people being raised now to think, oh, this is where I go to for advice on my life. You know, if I have a problem, I go to the government. You know, we have this generation of people who are loving the nanny state. We also have this generation of people who believe that they can't connect to God. They can't connect to, you know, their inner nature, their spirit, without going to church or without talking to that pastor or without listening to what the Pope says, or, you know, or what the Muslim imam says, or, you know, just whatever their religious beliefs are. They think that there is, again, some monopoly on that view. So to me, it's part of the same thing. There's some good books on that, including the one I'm reading there. It's called The Art of Not Being Governed, that examine historically how people have been more free, both in the political realm, but also in the spiritual realm, until these so-called rulers came along and monopolized that. So my advice to just help show people that to me, God is love, and God wants people to be free. You know, God wants people to be free and to experience the ups and the downs. And this is the opposite of what the government says. Of course, they tell you that we want to keep you safe, but what we want, I think all of us, is we want to promote the idea that freedom means making good and bad choices. You know, and that if there's a God in the sky, or even a God within all of us that is all of us, that God wants us to experience the gamut of life, which means the pain, the loss, the happiness, the joy, everything in between there. And that's really what freedom is about. And I think that's really what love is about. And I think ultimately the people who are seeking religion in those ways, these more rigid, dogmatic, controlling, fear-based ways, that's really what they're after. So, I mean, I know I kind of didn't really answer the question, but I just try to come to people with a place of, from a place of love. And sometimes there's people that I think we just won't be able to reach. I mean, I know that sounds like sort of defeatist, but there are ultimately some people that, like, you can beat your head against the wall, you can show them all kinds of documentaries, you can frame the conversation in a number of different ways. You can even point out in their own religious beliefs or their own political beliefs where they're wrong or where they contradict themselves, and they'll still cling to what it is that makes them feel safe and comfortable. And I think for those people, ultimately the best thing that we can do is, again, to work on ourselves and to build a world that will encourage them to be more open-minded and to be more free. Cool. Thank you, guys.